Let's see what's shaking in the mailbag.
You've got mail.
This one's titled "Hot and Spicy Takes." Uh, from a name I should have asked how to pronounce correctly before. Vasja. Vasja? Vasja? Whichever it is, I apologize for getting the name wrong at least once and probably twice. They write, I've been following your work and talks probably from around 2015, likely one of the Mountain Ruby talks or similar. I found your take on competence amusing, as from the outside, your competence and skill are obvious. Again, you want to be read on the show, starting with a compliment. Smart move. No one can achieve what you have without having it, pussyfooting around or not. I wanted to ask if you had ever given recommendations to others when they work in environments where they feel a similar way. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I've gotten feedback through various means, usually by explicit request to come help an underperforming team. I've gotten feedback across a few jobs that seem to tell me I'm a decent developer. Congratulations. That is great to know. I'm glad that you're a decent developer and that you're being recognized. I don't think I'm near where you're at. Doing the work you describe with setting up the automation for Becky in 8 hours is quite a bit faster than I think I could manage. However, I do find myself oftentimes being miles ahead of others, trying my best to ship code that is less buggy, pairing with others whenever possible, giving presentations, and trying to teach others the principles of good programming. However, oftentimes I feel a bit alone. I've had the pleasure of, throughout my career, working with some exceptional programmers. Unfortunately, I often find myself at the other end of the company from them, both of us doing our best work to, quote unquote, keep the ship afloat, so to speak. Any thoughts on where to go from here? Or if there even is somewhere else to go, other than building your own company or team, or just continuing to try to grow your skills until you can really say, I am fucking competent. In either case, thank you for your time and all the time you've done in the Rails community and beyond. We are still listening. Good way to end the email. Just remind me that like people listen to this shit. Not a ton of people. You're the insiders. But like enough of you that sometimes I get a nice email like this. Well, Vasja, Vasha. Thank you very much for the email. I think this is tough, right? Because there's two kinds of gradation that I would have you focus on. There's differences in skill in any population of people, like at a company, and differences in give a shit. Now, the give a shit metric, it's a function of multiple things, right? Like maybe at a particular company, they reward the wrong things. And so like, there's nothing in it for me to like give a shit about this job. So it might be an environmental factor is the reason I'm disengaged. Or it might be something intrinsic. It might just be like, I don't really fucking like working. I don't like this job. I don't like being a programmer, right? You don't, and the thing about it is when you're trying to, at an employer, if you're trying to assess whether an individual doesn't give a shit for their own reasons or for some systemic reason, you don't get to know the answer to that question. That's something that's only in their head, right? But it's to think it's all just about your skill level versus other people's skill and ability level drastically oversimplifies this into a literally, one-dimensional equation of like, at this company, there's only so many, people that are over here at the tall end of the spectrum. And, as a result, the company naturally, like you described, like spreads them out in different teams. And now we don't even get to collaborate. What the hell? That's natural, right? Like as skills go, like you should have blended teams and some people are more experienced. Eventually you're going to reach a point where like the company can't provide you with anyone that's more experienced or more highly skilled. And like, if you want to move on and find that, you might have to go to a company that has an even higher bar or is in a domain that's really, really hard, right? Like maybe you go into aviation and you're like, man, figuring out this stuff because the stakes are really high is really, really hard. Just ask Boeing, right? They're having a great fucking year. So I think when I'm analyzing this, either as a consultant or talking with a friend, I would add extra dimensions on because it's not a simple, like your relationship with work, I guarantee, is multifactored. It's not just I want to get better at this craft. It's also like the impact that you want, because you're a give a shit person, and you are finding a way to thrive in a give a shit way in this environment, right? The environment has not totally snuffed out your ability to give a shit. And so when you get recognized as a great employee, like that's your supervisors and your managers looking at you and saying like, good job, both being good at this and also giving a shit. Those two things are necessary. Sometimes, and this was like key to my consulting practice, and I think an important insight to anyone who's working as a contractor or an outsider at an organization, is that because you have an outsider's perspective, you have more visibility. I would have more visibility just quickly at a snap glance to identify what are the patterns that I'm witnessing here that are typical of gradations in skill, and what are the patterns that are common anti-patterns or stumbling blocks that you see happen a lot that would prevent people from giving a shit. That's why the founding book of a Test Double with Todd and I was not like Agile Web Development with Ruby on Rails. It was Drive by Daniel Pink, like the three things that you need to be great at a job and to be intrinsically motivated and to have that drive are autonomy, control. I said earlier, I'm big on autonomy. So like, and I think everyone who gives a shit is, and that's why, the people who are attracted to a company like Test Double, like no one forgets about autonomy. Yes, we love to have it. We love to have control over how we do our job. A purpose, some sense that we're doing this hard work for some fucking reason. Now, the purpose for people who work at product companies might be, I want to make that ride sharing app that makes it so that, I'm putting Justin in close quarters with somebody who smells like his last 3 meals were eaten in this seat. I want to make that happen. I want to give Justin that experience, and they succeeded. So, but that person, whoever built Lyft, like maybe they found purpose in that. Again, that's their task, not mine. And the third thing that you need is a path to mastery. Some process by which the future you can look back on present you and be like, I've come a long way. And that includes, that path to mastery is not just the company giving you some like sort of learning path, right? It's you yourself having the tools you need to introspect, to put challenges in front of yourself and to look back and then see like how far you came. One thing that I've struggled with at a few different companies is when I'm talking to an extremely high level developer who says, I've run out of challenges. I've tapped out I've learned everything that this place can teach me. And then if I'm looking at them, because as an outsider, everything just sort of looks like a role-playing game almost. If they're a character in my role-playing party, I'm like, yes, you have indeed. You're 100 out of 100 in skill points, or 99 out of 100 in skill points for the raw act of programming computers. But like, in terms of being a decent fucking human being, you're only a 60, right? Or being somebody that people will confide in and trust through hard problems, or somebody who they'll talk to at all when they're under duress, right? Which is an important trait to have. If you're going to be somebody who can help projects through to success, you got to be somebody that like people trust and that people pull into the room and to pull into their problems when maybe another developer is that person I mentioned earlier, shitting razor blades and not shipping their code for weeks because they feel unsafe. If they don't talk to you about it, they don't pull you in, or you don't do the work to go to them and build the relationship such that they do, then you're not, then there's room to grow, because you could have been the kind of person that could have overcome that obstacle. It's just that maybe that obstacle couldn't have been overcome with you coding even harder, faster, better. And when I tell people this, inevitably, when I explain to people like that there's a multifaceted number of skills, some are soft skills and some are technical. There's other technical skills too. Like, for example, maybe you're really good at coding, but when I watch you, like your editor environment, your tool chain is all fucked. It's all fuckity fucked. I'm watching you not use keyboard shortcuts. And I'm like, yeah, I'm watching time just fly out the window right now. So yeah, you might know the exact right code to write, but if you're just hunting, pecking, and you're using the mouse a lot, like You could be going faster. Or maybe you don't know how to like optimize feedback loops at all. Maybe you spend a lot of time just like sitting and staring and thinking out into space, like what's that perfect like 30 line function going to look like? And you're planning it all on your head and you're thinking through and you got a plan, you go at the whiteboard and then you go to the computer and you write it all out exactly as such. But 2 hours have passed and then you run it and maybe it doesn't work the first time. Well, if you don't run the code a lot, it'll take a long time to test your hypotheses. And so if it takes a long time to test your hypotheses, you've just made it very expensive to be wrong, right? And so like an important technical skill that's not just coding is designing and executing very, very fast feedback from the computer. Every time I have a thought, how do I codify that thought into an action that I feed into the computer to arrive at an answer that tells me if that thought is on the right track or the wrong track? That is what it means to take ownership of and drive and design a feedback loop with the system. So that's an important skill that very few developers ever take on, because you don't show up to work one day and then they say, okay, kids, we're learning about feedback loops today. That's just not how it fucking works. No one is good at this typically. It's just one of the 36 things that are assumed to be part of the job. And the people who are in positions of management and leadership, they typically, even if they were developers, they probably weren't great at that, because most people aren't. So they don't know how to reinforce it institutionally. But like, that's a great example of something that's like, well, when I talk about like being as good at my job as I can be and learning everything I can at this job, it's like, there's very often a lot of these other ancillary or supplementary skills that could stand to be improved. And yeah, when people hear this, they're often like, well, either I don't care and I just only want to write the bestest, hardest assed code in the world. I'm like, you make a web app is usually what I reply with. Like, go do some fucking science, go fold some proteins. Like, hard computing is elsewhere, right? If you look at that and you think, oh, this is just some soft talk bullshit, he just wants us all to kumbaya and get along better. It's like, dude, I am a fucking political creature. I'm not here to be your friend, right? If I'm your consultant, if I'm working at this company, it's like, there's an outcome somebody's paying for me to get to. And if I got to like, lie, cheat, steal, and kill, one of the skills that I have that a lot of people lack, that a lot of people think is unimportant, is office politics. I gave a whole talk about it in 2013 at Madison Ruby about like an experience where I essentially I had to work the room, all of the different stakeholders. I had one-on-one relationships with each of them. I had to finesse and finagle. Becky would say manipulate. I would say influence them down different directions to arrive at an outcome where 6 months later, they all saw things my way. Up to and including all agreed with me that, Barry should be fired or Barry needs to exit the company, right? I've gotten multiple executives ousted from companies by doing underhanded shit like that. I still have my integrity. Didn't lie. Didn't cheat, except for the times I lied. Cheat a little bit. Like, I feel good about it because I'm willing to take the long form view sometimes and be like, you know what? This person that I'm working against right now, he is making life a living fucking hell for a lot of people. And he is hurting him. Sometimes it's like, he's taking out his daddy issues on dozens or hundreds of developers, and whether he knows it or not, like, it's not fair. And there's no straightforward way to oust, leaders and managers typically. And so that means, it's just like refactoring. You're good at refactoring, right? That's, I have to introduce some new feature, but the way that the code is currently structured, it would be really hard to force that feature in. So what do? I back away, I refactor. I kind of move the bits and bobs, reshape the code so that, that new feature can kind of slide in more gracefully. Because then the system will be shaped like a system that is still working, still doing all the things exactly as it was. It just has this new little hole in the middle that's a perfect fit for whatever that feature needs to be. I do the same thing, not just with code, but with human problems, right? It's like, well, this organization, if I were just to introduce this one process change or tell them that Barry needs to get fired or whatever it is, if I were just to do that now, the organization wouldn't know what to do with it. It would bounce right off because they're not factored the way that they would succeed if you pulled that little block out of the Jenga tower right at that moment. But you move things and pieces around. It's like, hey, what if you took these two squads and combined them so that they had a shared interest in like an extrinsic, observable business objective, right? So that instead of just hemming and hawing and fighting and being distracted, they would collectively be on the same side of an argument against your incompetent product organization, right? And now they'd see that their real enemy isn't each other arguing about API contracts, is that the product organization doesn't have the business's like best interests for maximizing revenue or profitability or whatever. And they're the ones running in circles, but you can't see that right now. So like, what if I get these people together? So now they're working as a team and they're healthier. It moves from a theory of constraints perspective. The organization's kind of like, eyeballs or attention from the two teams that they thought were the problem onto the next worst constraint, which might be, oh, it turns out that even like if you give them a competent team, the real problem is the product people don't know what to do with that, right? And you move on, you solve the next problem. That's hard, right? It's not for everybody. It's a different skill set. It's a different kind of person necessarily that like might be the best coder ever. But that's just like a couple of random examples, right? Maybe it's security. Maybe it's something I'm not good at is mentoring and teaching. Even though I do a lot of bloviating, I'm not a good teacher because I get impatient and I don't care about people. Thank you so much for writing in, Vasja. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm gonna land at Vasja. Please write in again. Tell us how to pronounce your name. I'll read that one just to say sorry.